Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, in my continuing series on the Process Church and their eventual evolution into the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, I spent many hours, and this is what it takes, people, hours and hours, reading everything you can find online, reading their books, and there are... By the way, there's a whole book on best friends. You ever hear from that from the pundits out there trying to make money from their new national talk shows, or all these other people who like to attack the Process Church but haven't done any research on them? It's very interesting because it's a quaint thing. And of course, the mythical realities that authors write, like Maury Terry, who wants to blame everything on the Process Church without any proof whatsoever. Oh yeah, this guy told me. And after all, I was peeing next to him in a restaurant and I heard him talk to this other guy. This is the kind of nonsense you hear. There's no validation. There's no proof of anything. The Process Church is a weird, strange organization, and the people that are connected with it are very odd. Now, what they did, and what the management of the Process Church was, even though they had interesting Gnostic ideas of the blending of good and evil, understanding how terrible people in the earth are, well, that's all well and good, but that was just a line of BS because they didn't really follow what it would take to, yeah, okay, we know that. That's really nothing new. But they preached that, they manipulated people through the end days stuff, which is certainly something that always works. We're all going to die. Yeah, here's $50, tell me more. So this is what happens with all of them. The fact that the Process Church is involved in all sorts of things is really 100% unprovable. And their main structure of people wouldn't be able to pull off any of that. Was there a renegade group run by Marianne who was funded by them? Well, there is still a huge question mark in were there some strange going on. The new movie, Sympathy for the Devil, that was produced about the Process Church, is only available through purchase and on a satanic TV channel that I have now. Well, I find that interesting because apparently they didn't try and market this to the masses trying to say, well, look, we weren't really Satanists. Well, this is like saying they are. And the people involved in this movement and everything else and doing this film are definitely seem to be highly connected to, appear and alleged are Satanists. So we don't know, but I'm trying to get that film, which you can watch online in only one place, which is the Satanist TV station. But getting back to the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, I did a lot of research here recently to find out what is that all about. As I said, they have a book which I've ordered on the sanctuary, written by I'm assuming one of them. I don't know until I read it, and I will get back to everybody on it. But there is a book about the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary. Apparently, there's 3 books that have written about their involvement. Dogtown, a show they have. They rescued a lot of pets out of Katrina when that happened. We just don't know the facts of this, but there is several books, and they are $100 million a year plus charity. Wow. And apparently the people out there that were in the Process Church initially, in terms of some of the connected people that were there in the 80s and 90s, are still there now. These organizations fraught with children from the old Process Church and people that are still operating there, which is quite interesting to look at the fact of who's running that organization today. Now, apparently, Marianne McLean, who died in 2005, was a virtual, again, how do we verify this? How do you get death certificates? How do you get them? I'm not going to spend hours and hours. So we have to use the gossip that's out there. But apparently, she was in a coma for 2 years before she died. So I don't know what that was about. We don't have any illness situation, but she was basically in a coma for 2 years and then finally died in 2005, which is very interesting. Robert DeGrimston, apparently, from what we can tell, is still alive at 86, living in Sarasota, Florida, is what I've been able to trace him to. Again, if anybody has information, let me know. But her husband, DePrayer, his family's running it. It's a very family organization. Gregory Castle, he was originally one of the initial process church people, the Bastissa, which was one of the founders of the church, is also part of the chairman of the board, etc. So there's a lot of people there that are still there, and they have huge amounts of income coming in. They are a nonprofit, so you can actually go there and they post their records. And they tend to be several years old, but they seem to post it. What's on Sewerpedia is figures that come from 2016, which is almost worthless since it's so old. But in 2016, they had revenues of $90 million coming in. Endowments, which are people paying or giving them stuff, $20 million. Their expenses were $81 million, which is quite a bit in expenses. I'm not sure how much of that went to the actual process. Now, I've looked into this, and I always keep trying to give the Process Church some sort of credit. And every time I try and do that, I find out that their path gets murkier and murkier. So they're a big publicity organization. They have learned, and of course, you got to remember where they came from and what they did. It doesn't seem like anything changes. They're known as a nepotistic organization. The people in the organization are all working as this little clique of people. They are very aware of how to raise money and how to do marketing. Well, that's what the Process Church is all about. That's what those robes and the dogs and everything else. And they did pull it off. The big question with the Process Church and even Best Friends of today is the fact is, where does all their money come from? We already talked about millions of dollars going to the Process Church, which doesn't add up, but apparently they were able to follow the scientific Scientology model of how to really get a lot of money out of people. People also, while they may not help real organizations, rich people come in and give lots of money. Rich kids come in and they donate stuff. People donated everything that they owned, which it means property, cars, etc. So if you get enough people doing this, and it doesn't take thousands, but if you get enough people donating stuff, well, it can add up quickly. But it doesn't add up quickly of where all this money comes. They also were teaching people in courses and everything else, and they learned how to teach people courses the Scientology way, which is get lots and lots of money from people. Tie them in. Make sure they do whatever it takes to give you money. So it adds up to a little bit of where this. But the amount of money that coming into this organization, and I'm hoping that the book on it gives us some clarity. But this is kind of part one on the Best Friends Animal Society, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization through the IRS. So it means whatever you donate to them is deductible from your taxes. And that can help to get big donations because it means somebody doesn't have to pay tax on that, which why not donate money? So there's a method to that madness. They went to this strange place, but there's always, this very isolated area that they decided to set up in Utah. Kanab Canyon, which is the middle of nowhere. It's in southwestern Utah in Angel Canyon, is what it's called now, formerly Kanab Canyon, and so forth. But, Kanab is a very isolated place. And of course, founded by the Mormons, the usual stuff. It is Utah, so everything in Utah is connected to the Mormons in one way or another. But it's very interesting. They've had all sorts of strange little government contracts, little connections taking over big operations that would pay them a lot of money, like Los Angeles Animal Shelter. They got the contract for that. And, these are things that pay you millions of dollars. These are big operations that cost a lot to run. But what are we supposed to make of all this stuff? But I'm going to have to do further investigation. It's amazing how nobody's went down there, snooped around, or do anything else, tried to get information. Of course, the local town there, it's the usual classic Hollywood scenario. The local town of Kanab hates them, the people that go there. The problem is you have to rent property there. If you want to work at the sanctuary, you have to rent from somebody. And We'll get into that as well, since they treat their employees horribly. They have a huge turnover, and as such, a lot of people in town have been burnt by people who have moved out and can't pay their bills. It's not going to get you anywhere. If you tell the locals in that town that you're working for that best friend's place, which you think you would try and establish a relationship with, and this is the dirty, filthy, stinky underbelly of anything connected to the Process Church, is that nobody likes you. You're not working with the community. It seems to me that's, especially if you've got $100 million, it seems to me that you want to cuddle up and kiss up to the local community. Get them on your side, even if it's a surface thing, even if it's a smiley face lie, you'd think you want to help them out. And here's one of the most ironic things about the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary and Society. It has this huge facility there. And I don't know if 1,500 animals is a lot when you have $100 million. What is that, like $10,000 per animal? I don't know. It's just ridiculous amount of money. There isn't that many animals there. Of course, that is a lot of animals, but is it? If you're a big organization, they have this main area that they bought, and they're leasing, I don't know, what was it, 30 acres? What were they leasing here? An additional 33,000 acres. 130 kilometers leased from the United States Bureau of Land Management. So it's on 3,700, what is that? The sanctuary is on 3,700 acres with an additional 33,000. So they have almost 4,000 acres that they operate their main organization as. And what are they doing with 33,000 extra miles of land, kilometers of land? What is that all about? It can't be used. You can't get to it. It's a very rugged area. What's the point of having this behind it? And they have about 1,500 animals there of all types. I'm not sure if they handle circus animals and so forth, which are difficult, lions and other things. It seems to be everything from... they take most other animals. I'm not sure if they take that or not, but 1,500 homeless animals, which are mostly dogs and cats. Well, what does that mean? So I'm not sure that's a lot for an entire United States and for an organization that has $100 million. So they've stated. So this is all strange. They do have partners in different places, which I'm assuming filter a lot of money. They have several which you would call different animal rescue operations taking care of it. The big one in Los Angeles, California, Northeast Valley, and Mission Hills, California, place where I've actually been through. I haven't been to the animal place there, but I've used to go to Mission Hills all the time for different things. But the whole idea is that they have it in New York, they have it in New Orleans. They have these big centers they work with to help and save animals. Of course, they're big into spade and neutering, like they all are. They've worked with PetSmart. It's so many things. They have programs in a whole bunch of places. New Mexico, Texas, Baltimore. What is all these? Pennsylvania, Florida, Philadelphia. St. George, Utah. So, they have a lot of things going on here. What they do and what their intricacies of it is hard to say. Now, I haven't been able to find any direct problems, even though the organization itself has been rated with 2 stars by Charity Navigation. Now, Charity Navigation rates charities. 4 being the top rating, and what they got were 2 stars. It needs improvement. Now, you can usually tell an organization by reading about the past employees to a degree. You got to remember that a lot of people who are past employees have axes to grind. They don't like how they were treated, whether they were treated good or not. I certainly have had this in my own organization where I have a bunch of misfits who are treated like kings who then like to talk shit about me, which doesn't make sense, but that's one of the problems. But when you have a huge organization like this, which claims to have, and I don't know how many in their operation is now, but in 2015 they claimed 838 employees with 9,748 volunteers. Because like most of these things, they run a lot on volunteers, which is free money. Now, volunteers are good and bad. It's a difficult thing to handle volunteers because you just spend a lot of time with them, even though you're not paying them, but they have to be constantly watched, etc. But I'm assuming now they probably have over 1,000, and this was 2015. You're talking about a long time ago, so they probably maybe have 1,000, 1,200 employees. We don't know. So all of this information is always kind of dated. And again, doesn't matter. The whole idea is that they are a big organization taking in tens of millions, even to the point of having $100 million. That's important to know. You can certain people donate to them monthly. You can have money sent to them to take care of and help the animals. And of course, you know, who doesn't want to do that? I mean, animal beneficiaries or societies are very well funded if you are publicity strong enough. Everybody generally wants to give to help animals. While if you're a human and you're dying on the street, nobody really cares. So this is a fact. What's interesting is I looked into PETA, the Animal Anti-Cruelty Society. I forget the exact name of that. They all have bad ratings. They all have horrible ways of using their money. It's very interesting that here is something that seems to be like everything in life. There's a huge amount of this as a con. These are not people wanting to save animals. These are people that want to make money under this guise. It's very interesting that most of the ecological societies in the United States were started by very wealthy people to take land and have people not use it. Well, that sounds great, doesn't it? You want to save the forest? Well, it's not really true because the federal government gives permits to people to take the lumber, do whatever from that land as they are paid to do, as they are bribed to do. So the whole idea is that you can be a real rich person and say, well, I don't want to buy that land. I don't want to sit on it and pay taxes for 20, 30 years. So let the government have it and I'll just pay them for the license when I need to, whether it's drilling or wood, etc. So this is another thing people don't understand. Of what was doing. This is alleged to be a thing that Arnold Schwarzenegger did a lot in California, was giving all these permits out to these big corporations. I'm not sure, as I said, it's been alleged. So the whole idea, not surprising with that jamoke, but the whole idea is that this is how these things work. So that the major ecological organizations are all tied to the people that you consider the Illuminati, the bad people. And this is a fact because we know who started these things and who funds them. So the Rockefellers, etc. It's very interesting, but that's the game that goes on there. So let's say you want to start a business. Now, the person who was famous for this was, of course, Scientology. He figured out early in his business understanding that the great way to make money is to form a church. And then you form a church and then you pay as little taxes as possible by becoming a nonprofit. So this is one of the games you play, and that this is how you make lots of money. So everything in life, whether it's a church, whether it's a hospital, whether it's the military, whether it's the police, you name it, these are businesses. The news media is not a service. It's a business. It costs a lot of money to have reporters all over the world and to do what they do. So they have to sell time and they have to make exciting news. Now, the less viewers you have, and we have this with people like CNN and other people whose viewership has dropped way down, well, your revenues drop right down. So you have to do things to try and get viewers. So it's a business. So you're going to put out things that are going to attract viewers, but may not necessarily be the full truth, or maybe not even close to the full truth. We see this all the time with people's opinions that we run into in newsroom. We think, oh, just give us the facts. Well, they're never going to give you the facts. And what are the facts? It's in facts interpreted by that. Secondly, news really comes down to what you decide to report. So you decide to report what you're going to report, and all this other stuff you don't report. So you're selectively informing people. You're selectively giving people certain views of things. We've seen this happen, particularly right now with the war between Russia and the Ukraine, which is really slanted to something that's a very complicated issue, which basically is the Civil War, a place that the Russians have owned for over 100 years. These and so forth now is being shown to be these poor victims, which is not the full story. So the whole idea is that we need to fully understand all this and what goes on. So what are they doing around? What is their, again, they are rated a 2-star, which means they need improvement. Why? What's the major reason for that? Well, the major reason for that is they're very top-heavy. They have a lot of well-paid executives. They have 2 private planes. What else did they have? Some other private boat, I think they had. 2 private planes, a boat, etc., that they use for their executives to do what with. So it seems to me that's a little extreme, even though they are a $100 million organization. Their people have to fly around. You got to remember, it's a business. I mean, even the Dalai Lama said that, is the fact that, I have to spend all my time raising money instead of doing good work. That's right. And you're going to have to go out there and talk of the garbage and be public and be at the places. How much is actually done, how much real money gets poured into these things, we don't know. They have all this top-heavy thing. They have a lot of executives making a lot of money. And the usual thing, which is how they've operated the Process Church in the past and how they operate this organization, seems to be identical. And that's they treat their people horribly. Now, so do all the other pet people, so does everybody. I mean, Amazon treats their people horribly. You walk 5 miles a day, they're harassing you, they're constantly watching their employees. They think the way to make money is to squeeze it out of the employees, which I don't quite understand. The way you make money is you make more sales, keep your employees happy, working at peak, not torturing them. I mean, there's talk with Amazon that after 3 years, they want to get rid of you. They want to bring new people in. They feel at that time you've figured the system out, you know how to cheat things, and want to get rid of you. And of course, there are millions to take their places. That's the problem. So when you talk about the horrible treatment of employees, we have to understand that this is done in general. That's the way things are. And unless you're a unionized shop, you don't have a chance in hell of fighting back. They'll just fire you. So all that has to be done, and we need to move into that at a very high level to understand how badly workers are treated in general. But like all these places, it's like the movie industry. Well, if you work here, we're doing you a favor. You get to work and helping these animals. Isn't that fantastic? Wait a minute, my limousine is here. I don't have much time to drive, but you should be working harder and not asking for any decent wages. I got to go. I got a champagne brunch to go to. So this is how it works everywhere. So it's hard to be critical of them to too much extent. But here we are as another charity. They're taking care of animals and they're treating humans horribly. Now, does that mean the animals are taken care of at the best level? No, it's not. If you want animals to be taken care of properly, you have to have lots and lots of workers. Now, I've been a fan of these zoo shows, which are very popular in Europe, where they show you how animals are taken care of and the work that goes involved in there. And 90% of animal care is cleanup. Cleaning their poo, cleaning their environment, because this is not an open air thing. You are a certain amount. So you got to clean it up, or you have all sorts of illness and problems. The other thing you're doing is feeding them. So if you think that being in a zoo is petting the animals all day, you're pretty wrong. That may be 0.5%, 1%. It's the same thing with these people. They may be helping animals and doing it out of the goodness of their heart, but you're doing this in a hell plane. So when you do good things in hell, it doesn't really help you. You think it does, but it doesn't. And the minor benefit it has to the animals and everything else. This is a business. That's what it is. That's what they turned it into. For many years, the Process Church was begging money for animal causes that I assume and allege that they used for their own benefit. But that's what has been talked about in certain books where they've mentioned that they would go out and raise money to help animals. Well, the animals they help with their 10 or 20 German Shepherds they had, and this is how they contrived it. I don't think there was any money going to animal causes, nor is there a statement that I can find that the Process Church was working in animal causes, helping animals or doing anything else. There is talk of them having 20 to 30 German Shepherds at one time, and of course they had to take care of them, and that's a huge problem. You have to keep the dogs together, you got to feed them, you have to walk them, and of course anybody who's had a lot of animals understand, they're fighting all the time, they have all sorts of problems, etc. And there's a cost factor. You've got to feed them. There's vet cares and other things you have to do for animals. But there's no talk of them starting animal sanctuaries. But this was on the tip of this is what they figured out of all the years of the Process Church. The only way you could really make money was starting an animal sanctuary. And that's exactly what they did here. Now, and I still have been saying from day one, I'm really mystified of where these millions of dollars came from the Process Church. But apparently they had properties and everything. Trying to piece it together is difficult. Where did the money come from? And that, again, makes me suspicious. So who was paying them? How did they get this place going? They had enough money to buy this land, which I'm assuming was not expensive in the middle of nowhere. Why did they lease? And how much is that lease costing them for 33,000 acres of land bordering their property? What are they doing with that? That land cannot be used for anything. There's no roads up there, and I'm not sure they can even build roads. So what is this very isolated area being used for? What are they doing up there? Now, I could never find any. The best way to look at an organization is look at all these particular postings to a degree, because there can be an organized effort against people, which has happened to me and many others who are doing the good path, because the bad guys are organized and will leave a bunch of crap on you everywhere. They'll put up stuff that is completely and totally untrue. So understanding all that stuff, we have to understand that as well. But when you go there and look what employees are saying about the place, people visiting there, and a lot of it's been taken down from what I understand, and that's typical as well. There's no reason for anybody, and I do this on my YouTube channel. If you're going to put negative nonsense, which is all lies, I'm not going to leave that up there. That just makes people find the experience of anything to be bad. And people want to believe negative things because that's in your nature. You're evil. So the whole day is you're going to believe negative things, not that someone's good. That's just the evil nature of mankind. But there's enough of it up there, people talking about them in different forums in terms of what they and ex-employees and their opinions on this, which I think are coming from third parties. Then there's people that go there. And there's even some very suspicious things there. Now, you can go to the animal sanctuary, and they have tours every day, which are hard to get on. So if you want to go there, make sure that you have reservations ahead of time, because if you just show up there, you get the pleasure of seeing, which is another weird thing in my mind, you get the pleasure of seeing the graveyard for the pets, a restaurant, and their store. And, of course, they have a little hotel there as well. They have a 40-room hotel, which apparently at one time was for workers to live there for free, that they turned into a hotel to make more money. Now, I think they should have both, and 40 rooms doesn't seem to be enough to me. Their nightly fees are okay. They're certainly not inexpensive, and they certainly aren't overly expensive. But they do have that. They have a vegetarian restaurant on the premises, which has pretty good food at a low price. So you can eat there every day, have a room there, excuse me, etc. They also have a store which sells their stuff, etc. Everybody should have that. That's how you make money. So what's the... So to say that this is some sort of commercial thing is not. That's what you do. That's how you make money. And why not? This is how you raise money to use it for a good cause. But a tiny hotel like that, which should be, doubled or tripled, I'm assuming that it's filled up all the time. So again, if you want to go there, make sure you got reservations for everything. That's one thing that a lot of people complained about, was the fact that they didn't have reservations. They couldn't see any of the animals. And why can't you see some of the animals? That's another question I have. You get the pleasure of seeing the graveyard. Now, is that supposed to motivate you to donate? I don't know. To me, it bums me out. So all that does is remind me of all my pets that have passed, not that I want to help pets that are there now. Well, what is going on there? A lot of people were greeted poorly. The people are underpaid. They're not happy. You're dealing with the public all the time. Well, look, I know about it. I worked in that. I worked at Magic Mountain for 4 years, dealing with hundreds of people on the weekends as a 16-year-old kid, and everybody was a jerk, and you didn't like people, because people were obnoxious. You had crowds all the time. So this happens. So are you friendly? Well, when you're 16, you're kind of friendly, but not in general. In general, that's not the case. So people are pressurized there. Now, this is the one complaint. Let me get to the meat of these things here. So looking through it, there's numerous. And I looked at what they're paying. Some people claimed, and I don't quite understand it, that the benefits are good, but they're making about $14 an hour of a job that's very difficult to do. So that's not much money. That's generally the average pay. I think Amazon pays $16. Most people that are serious companies now are paying this $14 to $16 an hour. Now, that isn't much money for the work. One of the problems with Amazon is the criticism of their warehouse people is that it's a very difficult, stressing job for little amount of money. It's a job that should be $20, $25 an hour, and it's only $15. This is very typical in Europe, where there's already been several strikes against them, particularly in Germany, who's trying to push Amazon out. But it's a lot of work for little money. That's the way it goes. So this is part of the problem of all of these things. So basically you're cleaning up poo, you're scrubbing places down, you're hauling stuff away, and you're feeding the animals. That's what you do. That's what an animal care worker does. They seem to be very understaffed in medical veterinarians. They cost a lot of money. And they even pay them lower than they should because, after all, Doc, you're helping the animals. My limousine is here. Wait a minute. I got to talk to the driver. Is my champagne cold? Okay. Let me go back here. Yeah, well, I've got to go here, but, you can't pay you because of the fact that, you're helping the animals. So they're very understaffed. They're very overworked, which should be the opposite. The only way that you can give proper care in a service industry, this includes hospitals, sanctuaries like this, hotels, by the way, good hotels. What can you judge a good hotel by? Well, the really fancy hotels generally have one employee per room. So they are able to service people because they have this massive amount of people that can run around and give you good service. And of course, they charge you a lot of money for it. But the whole idea, if you're going to run an operation like this, watch animals, give them that extra care, well, it means you have to stop at times. You have to take care of something that has to be done. Maybe even it's a cleaning or maintenance item. That could take hours. But that means if you have to feed them and clean them, it means there's extra hours involved because you got a special thing. There's nobody to cover for you. So the pay is very low and the prices for rent is very high. Well, doesn't that sound familiar? Same old story. And when this is brought to their attention, it's all about their two planes, their yachts, and all the other things they're doing in this very nepotism organization. Apparently, the whole organization is very nepotism-based, so is alleged online, and they have groups of people as well. So there's this cliquish thing that comes back from their original Process Church realities. And the family members from the Process Church apparently are running this organization almost entirely. They're all hooked up. The main management people that are listed online are all the old Process Church people that are either still alive or their wives, daughters, or kids, etc. And they'll get everything. Now, what does that mean? Now, if you are a person, you should be doing something. I'm a strong believer in that you do something you love, and you should be amply rewarded for it. That doesn't mean that you should be excessively rewarded, because I don't think anybody should be. But you should, if you're a person helping animals, you should be rewarded for that more than the average person working at Amazon does. So because you're doing good work, and if anything, you should have a stressless job where you have lots of help, because lots of people want to do that. The problem is what they do as well is they have people that want to get a job there. They make them work for free for a week. Isn't that nice? Without pay, without room, without board. So you pay everything for a week, and they generally then say, I'm sorry, but we don't really have anything for you. So they got a week of work out of you for free. This is not a con they do. How typical of all these organizations, and how typical of kind of the dirty background of the Process Church. They don't hire enough people, as I've mentioned. So everybody is overworked and underpaid and stressed out. So they just burn the hell out of young people. And of course, they have this long waiting list. Oh, I want to work with animals. Yeah, well, that's right. And they're going to play that out to you. They're going to use and abuse you. And they'll get, once you tire out and they burn you out, they'll bring somebody else in so they don't have to pay more. They also have lots and lots of volunteers, but volunteers are very unreliable. If they find out that the work is very hard after the first day and say, gee, that was fun, interesting, had a good time, but I'm not going back tomorrow and shoveling poo all day. So they don't show up. So a lot of people tend to burn out. Other people come for what is considered a volunteer time. This is their con they do. So you go there and you pay them as a volunteer worker, stay there, eat their food, everything else, and you pay for all that. They're not giving it to you. And you volunteer your time there. So they have thousands of these people that do that, so they're using that. But the problem, and of course you're stuck there, because if you're there for 3 or 4 days, well, where are you going to go? I guess you could quit and go home, but the bottom line is you're stuck there. But volunteers are not they're there for the higher cause, not there to dig ditches, so to speak. So they work what they have to do, but they're there kind of living their personal fantasy, looking at the animals, saying how wonderful it is, with really not participating at the bottom line. So they have a very bad reputation. Nobody likes that. And what does this really mean? It means that they are not giving, from what I can ascertain and allege, they are not being able to give the proper care they should be, because it takes care to do things right, and that means personnel. And this is something that's always cut back on. In hospitals, in any kind of places, they don't have enough people. And anybody who's worked in a people industry understands how much time it takes, because you're going to run into situations that require personal attention for longer periods of time. And it may be many. So that means you have lots of it. It means you can't do your regular job. So you need somebody to cover for you. You need extra employees. None of this is happening. Now, I couldn't find anywhere online where they're accused of doing anything negative to the animals, except there's got to be a certain neglect of animals here. And I allege that. I allege, because of the fact that people are overworked and underpaid, that there is a neglect here. And I wonder what they do with sicker animals that they have to pay for or anything else. They claim they heal them. They claim they do this. I don't know. How many animals go to other places? I'm not sure that 1,500 animals is a great thing for a $100 million charity. Is that really most you can handle? Now, they do a lot of other things. That's 1,500 on the property. They have many other shelters around the country. So, but what does that actually mean? Well, we don't really know. Well, we'd have to look into all this. And one thing I cannot find is any direct statements that of any negativity. There's a few people alluding to the fact that, well, you don't understand what's really going on there. Now, was that more of what's really going on in a organization, of how people are being abused, which is standard practice, particularly for these kind of people who have treated everybody like trash, the entire organization they've had, where they lived in the lab. This is the exact same thing they were doing with all their Process Church, where the founders were living in mansions, living up the good life, and everybody else was really to the point of starving. They even left babies without food and proper care. I mean, this has been documented as best as we can prove. And it seems to me this is the same thing going on here. Yeah, you know, they're smiley face for animals while they're getting your check. And of course, you know, you give them a $100 check, and where does that money go? So, the bottom line is that how much of that $100 goes to the charity? You know, most charities, very little of it goes. And I tend to think it's the same situation here. But of course, they do list that as a nonprofit of where the money goes to, etc. So we don't know. But if you've got staff like this, you've got exhausted staff, you've got staff that huge turnover, well, that means that you can't run a proper organization. You need people to stay that know what they're going. This is critical. I have this problem myself, is every time I change a particular person, I've got to retrain them into the whole system again. This is very costly, very tiresome, and it hurts the organization because I can't do other things that I need to do, because even though you hire a person and they're doing the best they can, well, you have to train them in everything. Well, that's a giant, huge waste of time that really hurts organizations. So they're doing the same thing here because they have a huge turnover because they're not paying people enough. So the basic idea here is that this is not an organization that is treating its people good. How much good work they're doing for the bang for the buck here, for their hundreds of millions of dollars and their different facilities around the country, we don't know. There is no direct accusing that I can find online of people saying, well, they're not doing this. But you're not paying employees. They're not giving good service. They're not paying vets that are overworked properly. All this adds up to poor animal care. Are they cutting the amount of money they buy for feed and so forth? They're buying the cheapest feed that they can, so they don't have to pay more money for it, which hurts the animals in the long run. That's one thing people don't understand about the economy. If we don't have enough wheat and grain and other things, the animals are fed bad grain and wheat. And guess what? You eat the animals that eat the bad stuff. So there's, and the other thing they do is they tend not to, if there's a price problem in farms and so forth, well, the animals don't get the medical care they need. So all of this is the same thing, but it shouldn't be the excuse with this organization because they have these millions and millions of dollars coming in and they have great support from everyone. Who wouldn't want to support something like this? But unless you know what's going on intimately in an organization like this. Now, here's the other few things I'll get into and then close this up is that when you go there, as I said, not only were the people kind of hostile, some are better than others, but the point is that you got to have a reservation to go on one of their tours where they show you the animals. They do have a mini tour of sorts, and I'm not even sure you can get on that without a actual reservation. But the tours are of buildings in the graveyard. Well, I don't get that. Are they hiding something? Is that good PR? Shouldn't you have like a petting zoo out in the front there where people can come and see the animals and you watch them and they can pet them and so forth, even if you charge them some money to enter? None of that is there. You can't see any of the animals from the main facility. Suspicious. Why? Well, it's hard to have 1,500 animals running wild everywhere, but they certainly don't have that anyway. There are segmented areas where different animals are kept. Obviously, you can't mix everybody together. And I'm assuming you have to segment certain dogs and cats, they fight, whatever it is. It's a problem, but there is none of that. The only thing that is free to the people there is the pet cemetery, which they state to you when you come in is so beautiful, go visit the cemetery. And as I mentioned just a little while ago, is this really positive? Does this get people's money? I don't know. I find that not was something I'd necessarily want to have prominently there. But again, if people pay to have their pets buried there, which I'm assuming they do, well, you want to have it open so you could show up anytime as it would be any kind of cemetery that you can go see your loved one. You don't have to make a reservation at Forest Lawn to go see someone who's buried there. You just show up, and it has opening hours. Maybe that's part of it, but you don't get to see anything. There doesn't seem to be any animal activity that you can see from the facilities. And again, I have to wonder why this is. It seems to me this is a bad way to set something up. It doesn't create the kind of energy to get people to give. It's almost like you're hiding something. Well, what's going on? Well, there has been no ex-employees that have alleged any kind of abuse, as I've mentioned. They haven't stated that the animals were beaten or harmed or in any way, even though they did mention that they didn't get the care they should in certain areas and that they manipulated things, and they've even had some serious problems. There's mention of a cat place, which is supposed to take care of a lot of sick cats, that they opened up and then they closed because most of the cats were dying. And the problem is they weren't getting the proper care, and that would require expensive trained people to go in there and take care of sick animals. They transferred these apparently to the local facilities so that they could handle them because they didn't want to have the blood on their hands. Well, that shows me a charity that needs to take care of a serious issue, something that is difficult, but isn't that what a charity's for? Isn't that what you're supposed to figure out, is to do the difficult stuff, not to do the easy stuff? Well, not in this world, of course. But this is all the questions. And every time, as I said, I try and go in and say, because I was completely convinced that this Best Friends Animal Sanctuary was a pretty clean organization. But is anybody clean? None of the other pet organizations are clean either. They all got bad ratings. They're all top heavy. Nobody knows where the money goes in a lot of this stuff. So they all seem to be. And of course, they're no exception to it. And the fact that the employees are paid low, can't find housing, and are overworked. And of course, you're never going to get overtime or anything else. You can't just put in your day. I'm sure everybody's working a little over, all for the good of the animals. Yeah, and of course, that's wonderful if that's what was happening, but it's not really for the good of the animals. It's for the profit of the leaders of any group. They get millions and millions of dollars, live high on the hog, and they pay you as little as possible. They bring in as many untrained people as they can, which puts a burden on all the people that work there. Because you can't let people do what they want. Supervision is difficult and very stressing. I always say when I hire somebody that, you're not helping me until you're fully trained. What now I have is two jobs, the job of doing what I had to do before and the job that I have now to train you. So that's two jobs until you can do stuff on your own. And how long does that take? I always have to watch people constantly when they do jobs, even when they've been doing it consistently, because people falter constantly. They do things wrong because they're lazy and really uncaring. So they have all these problems which are innate in these kind of organizations, which we need to deal with at a higher level. So here again, we run into another wall. Is this organization up to anything nefarious? Well, why do they have 33,000 acres of empty land? What is that being used for? And what do they think they're going to do with that land? Why is that a buffer? And how much is it costing them if they're not using this land? 33,000 acres they have leased from the actual federal government. Well, why? Well, for what? And if that's a big chunk of money, which I'm assuming it must be, why do they have it? Very suspicious. And what do they plan on doing with it? Because these areas are not places you can walk into. They may be hiking trails up there. These are places that you have to hike into. You have to use four-wheel drives. There's no roads up there. So what do we need to know about that and what is going on there? Very suspicious. Why are there no animals seen from there? Why can't you take a tour where you're shown animals, even if it's a staged area? You have a little area where you stage everything. And all the nicey animals are put there, and you got people there waving at them and feeding them and petting them. Also, you put on a big show. Why? Why is that not there? This shows to me as poor management. Why isn't that there? So they want you to pay for a tour to see the animals. Maybe that's part of it. But it seems to me that's poor. And why is the major flagship of their operation a graveyard? What does that mean? So when you take the little mini tour, they show you buildings and the graveyard and not a single animal. It's animal sanctuary. Come on. Or is it an animal death place? I mean, what is that? I find this very bizarre. And of course, a lot of people went there and they love the animals and they love staying. Well, of course it is. You're in this idyllic environment, helping animals, even if you only do it for a short period of time. And you feel good about yourself, of course. Does that mean any difference? Well, people do things because it makes them feel good. Are you making an effective change in the lives of the animals? Well, I don't know. Of course, it's better to try and fail than not to do anything and sit home and eat Cheetos and watch Gilligan's Island. So all of this is something that we need to look at. But there's a lot of questions, as there always is. And this organization has got the same nasty, rotten attitudes that is talked about in the books by Timothy Wiley and by members of the church in the past who were horribly abused. Medical wasn't paid. They had 50 cents a day to eat on. That's what their lunch they had. I don't know. Of course, that was the 70s, but I'm not sure you could get anything for 50 cents in the 70s either. This was the kind of thing they did. They didn't pay to take care of their children. They wouldn't pay for them to have proper food. This is talked about as well. Now, this may be exaggerated because there's several children that have gotten through the system and went to other areas of the Process Church after these difficult times. So we don't know. And we really don't know what's going on. Only one of the children that I know has come forward and written a book that certainly doesn't say anything overly bad other than the fact that I don't want to be in a church and beg all day and be with a group of people. I want mommy and daddy, and I want to have a normal life. There was no talk of anything there. There's also no talk of any rituals going on, any dead animals found, or anything else that any of the ex-employees have written about, even anonymously. So none of that has come out of accusing them of any of that, but that's not necessarily unusual. Those could have been posted somewhere. And you got to remember, people think the internet means freedom. The internet means control. Everything you do is watched, can be deleted, can be blocked, or minimalized, meaning they publish it someplace, but maybe others don't even see it. I find this interesting on certain posts that I leave on YouTube, that there's never a yay or nay reaction to them. So no matter how obnoxious they are in one way or another, that people don't say they like it, they don't say they hate it. Now, why is that? So the whole idea is that doesn't make any great sense. Well, so many other comments seem to be done that way. So there is something going on there. So we don't know if people have alleged these things and they've been taken off and what's going on. There doesn't seem to be any track of this. How much good work have they done? I don't know. Apparently, they were down at Katrina. There's a book on that, but it didn't say that they sent a whole bunch of people down there to do stuff. I don't know. There's other things as well. But there are these books on the organization. I will report back on them once I get them and read them like I always do. And as usual, we're in this same kind of gray to darkish ground of what is this organization up to? And, that goes for everything. I mean, you hear the background on certain organizations, Boys Town. Well, you can only think of good things there, right? Help and Orphans. Well, there's supposed to be pedophile rings going through there. And then we go through all the other things. I just heard about homeless centers where gangsters run them. This is the real world. And what do we do about it, which I'll be dealing with in another subject, because it's not necessarily has any value getting in depth in these things. It seems to produce more negativity than positivity. So what is it doing about it? What are these activities that are going on everywhere? So we don't know. As a general situation, they are taking care of many, many animals. They have many, many programs all over the country. They are running these different no-kill shelters in Los Angeles, New York, I believe in New Orleans, Philadelphia, all the main areas, they have these no-kill shelters, I believe. They certainly are filtering money in there. So they are helping all these areas. The problem is, like most things, it's to a large extent, my opinion is, I allege it's kind of a gloss. There's people at the top. This is a great way to make lots of money. And they are doing some good work. Now, where is that on a scale of 1 to 10? I can't really guess. What bang for the buck? If a rich person gives $2,000 to a charity, that isn't much. That's pocket money. If I give $2,000 to a charity, that means that's a lot of money for me. So the whole idea is that everything is relative. Is the kind of work they're doing for the dollars coming in? And why are there so excess properties that don't seem to be used? What is the point of that? Where is all that money going to? They have a hotel. They have other things. The facilities, from what I understand, are okay. And things are kept up okay, but this isn't somebody that's $100 million a year operation. They don't have a huge hotel. They don't have a huge restaurant. They don't seem to have big facilities. They don't have a lot of tours. Well, what is going on there? Is the bang for the buck there? And is that facility there not that important to them? Meaning this is the showcase, but we are filtering a lot of money to other places around the country. So all of these are the big questions that you'd like to see. But, as usual, all the pundits out there, all the people that want, they're just doing it. They never talk to anybody. They don't get anybody to talk from Best Friends. People have never interviewed or read the books of Michael Aquino. They never read anything. They never follow up. They want sensational garbage. It's basically what I like to call things now is porno interviews. Where's the sexy stuff? Where's the porno? You can't turn away from it. Yeah, they were killing babies. They're kidnapping me. Yeah. Well, the point is there's no proof of any of this. And then they want to use names, particularly people involved, so they can be credible. Oh, yeah, it's Michael Aquino. Well, everybody knows Michael Aquino. He's everywhere. And now he's dead. Are the people going to still be seeing him? Now they're stating that he ain't dead. He's out there doing stuff. He's the vampire. So we're going to hear that for a long time. So there's endless conspiracies which are nice to have initially to get people to think in a bigger, broader fashion, but tends to come into useless porno thinking where it's just a hype, a titillation for that moment. And most of what we have in this world is porno. We have porno news now about the war that's going on. It's titillation news. There's nothing there of value. It's propaganda. It's there to affect you in an emotional way so you tune into these reports. The same thing with all these other people with shows and these people who claim they were abused and everybody knows him and he's connected to everything. Well, I find that to be pretty dumb. And why aren't other people named? Why aren't there names of people that pop up all the time or photos of people that pop up all the time? That goes, Aquino was one busy mother. He's everywhere. And there's nobody else doing anything? He was doing it all? Well, it doesn't make sense. He has all of a sudden, he's working for the NSA and he's a general. So they gave him special rank. So we don't know if any of this is true. Certainly that could be possible, but the point is he was thrown out of the military. Now, to think, so there were, while he was allowed to operate on one degree, while they wanted people like him, on the other hand, he was not in the military for many years. And he has apparently written down his beliefs, his practices, and everything else. There's a large amount of literature which an egotistical maniac like him would want. So he wanted to clarify his position. He wanted to tell people what he knew. Now, is this filtered? Is a lot left out? Well, of course it is. Nobody puts things in that are generally negative. So they filter out and things look better than they should. But it still gives you a picture. It gives you a timeline of what is going on. So to link him to everything, to think he's the only one, and nobody else's name comes up, nobody has anybody else to talk about, they don't talk. Well, it's very rare when you hear other people's names. So everything's blamed on these people. Everything's blamed on the Process Church because that was a moneymaker for Maury Terry. Maury Terry, that was his career. And he was very devious and made sure that nobody else had any kind of complete picture and gave false and misinformation to a whole bunch of people. So he would be the only one that had it so that he could make money off of it. I also allege with him that he was probably blackmailed and threatened and put out what he was told to put out. And this is the other factor that comes with everybody. People are told to do things, they're threatened, they're blackmailed. So what comes out is all this disinformation, and this is the game that's played. So here again, we really don't know. It appears at this time that the majority of what they're doing is helping animals. They treat people horribly. What's new? All companies do. And of course, their church left people starving and left children starving. So it's not unusual that this would carry on. And they don't seem to be, as much as they seem to have all this money, I don't see them out there. Where they're working, how they get the money, how they sustain things is all very interesting. And being a nonprofit, I mean, they have to be very open. But again, nobody's calling them up, talking to them, trying to get in-depth information, trying to do in-depth investigations. Nobody's done it. Nobody's went there and talked. I got this information off of the web, where people in different forums and other things. Have they ever talked about that? Have all these pundits out there that are talking about how terrible? None of them investigated this. Matter of fact, the people who were so adamantly against the Process Church, particularly what apparently are supposed to be the better law enforcement, still claim that operation is some satanic whole, and they've never been out there, they've never researched it, they've never read they've done no investigations at all. It's all hearsay, and wherever they went there were murders, and as they went west there were murders there as well. Well, what is this stuff? I'm not sure what any of that stuff means. There certainly is a very corrupt aspect to all of these organizations that are out there in terms of law enforcement, all these murderers, the Son of Sam. Well, there seems to be governmental conspiracy brainwashing things that went on there. For what ultimate purpose, we don't know. Why these people do it, and can we trust what David Berkowitz, the Son of Sam, tells us? Well, hell no. And that goes with most other people. And they try and take things and say that they're running all of these murderous cults and everything else, particularly Michael Aquino. Well, there's no proof of this. And I don't know if we can check him by timelines. Was he in this area? Well, it's unlikely. It's unlikely we can do most of that. Can we check where their credit cards were used in terms of were they in that area at that time? Well, all this is the type of investigation that costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time. Linking someone like this and saying this guy's name is just verifying you because, Michael Aquino, we know him. He was on TV show. For a guy who wants to be secret, it's like the joke of James Bond. Everybody knew James Bond was a spy. Well, you can't be known if you're a spy. It's as simple as that. Your cover is blown. So it's a little bit ridiculous when you get into it. So the point is that anywhere Michael Aquino went, he was a noticeable figure. People knew him. He had a funny haircut and eyebrows. He's not a guy that necessarily would pass you by and you would notice him. So that makes doing really dangerous, illegal, perverted stuff much more difficult. So we have to keep that in mind with the bigger picture here. So does that make sense? The fact that who was there? People had stated that Robert de Grimston was at Best Friends Animal. No, his wife threw him out 10 years before that organization was even started. He had nothing. He's probably never, ever been there. But I heard one supposedly credible law enforcement person saying that, yeah, Dick Grimstone was there. I've heard so many things that are just complete and total. They are not getting their facts straight. And for you to open your mouth and say that, well, that's just making things more porno for the actual reality that's out there. And that's what it really is. It's porno everything. It's making people fill their pockets with sensationalism that has no verification to it whatsoever. There's no proof that Michael Aquino was ever in the NSA or was made a general. So that seems to me to be something that he would have announced. But he was out of the military at the time of these things, supposedly as well. But what goes on behind the scenes? Could he be made an unofficial general? Could he have been in the NSA? Well, certainly could have. I mean, the problem is all these people lie all the time. It is possible, but his activities are fairly well tracked. As he said, he's well known. He can't go anywhere without people identifying him. So what does all that mean? So here we go again. What's good, what's bad, what's going on is still always open for investigation. At this particular time, it seems like in terms of animal welfare that they're doing in the United States, and they have to prove this as a nonprofit, and you can't steal that much money, but they are very top heavy. They don't pay their employees well, nor treat them well. And they are spending money to help animals. And to what degree, what bang for the buck anybody's getting out of that? Well, it's still up for grabs. It does seem to be in the bigger picture at this point, in terms of help versus fraud, they do seem to be in the 60, 70% of, yeah, they're doing some good work. What level that is, I don't know. I don't know if I would give them money it's best to support local facilities that you can kind of watch. So if you give money to your local animal care organization, hopefully you can tell whether they're doing their job or not. And this way you have a little more control, or giving money to this this multi-million-dollar organization that is nothing more than an internet facility is difficult to find out if you're getting the bang for the buck. Obviously, they're taking care of animals or running big organizations, but is it worth $100 million? So should you give money to an organization that possibly so little goes to it? Well, these are things you have to find out and so forth. Generally, as you said, local situations generally have more control. Local people tend to put all the money they can to take care of the animals, and national organizations like this spend a lot of money on marketing, and that's one of the other things in their financials. They show a lot of money going to marketing, a lot of money for promotion, a lot of money to that, and it seems to be excessive, but that's a personal opinion. So I hope you've enjoyed this, gave you some more enlightenment. Until next time.